Joining us via Skype, Ron Martinelli, forensic criminologist and retired police detective. So, Ron, I'll let you give your sort of profile on this guy, but he was clearly delusional. He probably was psychotic, and something, this escalated into something far greater than just an argument.
Yeah, exactly, Doctor. 90% of the suicide completers have some diagnosis of mental illness or drug abuse. I refer to people like Mr. Shakar as ticking time bombs. I've written a lot about these people. I've also written a lot about suicidality. And when we go back over this thing now, and I'm sure the police are involved in this, we do what's called a psychological autopsy on this individual. And I'm sure that we're going to find during the course of the next few days a lot more about him, including, cues to him being a ticking time bomb, a slow burning fuse. We're going to look for something referred to as a flicker moment or a tripwire, which is what we refer to as a precipitating event. That look at the cues of homicidal and suicidality at the same time.
Tiffany, I wonder if you have anything to add to that. I think we're both in agreement with that assessment.
Yeah. Yeah, this is someone who appears to have been highly paranoid and certainly focused on revenge. And when you have someone with the type of mental health makeup that we're thinking about, revenge is not just, a tit for tat. It's, I'm going to get you back. I'm going to hurt you worse than you hurt me. And I'm going to make sure you can't retaliate against me. I'm going to seal the deal. I'm going to make my last statement the end all be all. And then you end up with a murder-suicide.
According to Los Angeles police, the UCLA gunman, his name is Manak Sarkar, accused his victim, the Professor William Klug, of having stolen his computer code, giving it to somebody else. Of course, these accusations are, according to the police, quote, a making of his own imagination. And Tiffany, we would just call that a delusion, a grandiose, paranoid delusion.
Yeah,
and it's a fixed delusion where he consistently builds this story that doesn't exist in reality.
Right. And you know what, Dr. Drew, we all have done this. When we've disagreed with someone, we've been mad at someone, we kind of start to think about what it is that they might have been thinking, and we dream up these conversations that we might have with this person if we're ever able to confront them. But for us, we understand that those things aren't real. These things aren't really happening. For someone like Mr. Sarkar, he doesn't seem to be faced with his own reality and what's really going on, and he may have let those conversations that he's had in his head play out in a very destructive way.
And the typical kinds of thing, and this is not to put aim at people with specific diagnoses, but the kinds of diagnoses that he could be subject to would be bipolar or schizophrenia or schizoaffective or psychotic depression, perhaps. These are the kinds of things that lead to all this. Now, according to Los Angeles Times, in a blog post dated March 10th, he wrote, quote, William Klug, UCLA professor, is not the kind of person when you think of a professor. He's a very sick person. Your enemy is my enemy, but your friend can do a lot more harm. Be careful about whom you trust. Anahita, it's troubling, but there's nothing there to report. You can't do anything. You can't take any action on that.
You can't, but you have to ask yourself, were there not any other warning signs? Maybe not that social media post, but apparently he had been attacking this professor for months before the killing on different Facebook posts, I believe. So, did anyone see anything? Did his family, his friends see any suspect behavior? Dr. Drew, this wasn't just a heat of passion rage killing. This was clearly planned. It was plotted. It was premeditated. And you always have to ask yourself, could this have been prevented if somebody saw something?
Well, I'm gonna go to Ron, who profiles this stuff. Ron, I'm out of time, but please, if you have a very brief burst, I'm going to ask you an unfair question. Go ahead.
Doctor, very quick. These people always give indications. This is not a spontaneous act. They give indications to others that the fuse is lit and they are going to explode. The problem that we have is the friends, associates, relatives, they ignore it or they think it's going to pass and it doesn't. And then we have the tripwire, the bomb explodes, and you just can't put it back into the bottle. And that's clearly what happened here. I think as we go further into this thing, we're going to find a lot more about Mr. Shakar and his pent-up rage.
Next, more on the so-called kill list. And later, sex between an adult teacher and a 13-year-old student. Police say the scandal involved a pregnancy that she terminated. Back up to this.
Our breaking news comes to us regarding that shooting at UCLA. You probably saw the breaking news unfolding yesterday as a gunman killed a professor and then himself.
Police now revealing what they're calling a kill list has been found in the shooter's home, and they say the list has led them to a second victim.
In the search of Sarkar's residence in Minneapolis, a list was located that had Professor Klug's name on it, another UCLA's professor's name on it, and the name of the female victim that was later located in the nearby town.
Again, that note found in the shooter's backpack led them to the kill list, so-called. The note said, "Check on my cat." Back with Anahita, Tiffany, and Ron. Ron, you know, what's kind of unusual about this, I'll see if you agree with me on this, is the systematic sort of quality to this. I mean, he kills somebody and then drags his weapon across the country and then patiently. Usually people like this are much more agitated and fragmented, no?
Well, you also have to understand a little bit about his background. I mean, look at his, you know, he was a doctoral student in engineering. Those people tend to be very analytical. They tend to be very anal in how they look at things. So you're not seeing, I don't see any emphasis or any indications of agitated or chaotic behavior here. It looks like it.
That's kind of weird, right? To me, that's unusual. You think of the West Virginia shooter. I mean, that was, you know, that was craziness writ large. And this is not that. This is something far more circumspect.
Right. But doesn't mean that mental health is not an indicator or a precipitator here. I absolutely agree. The paranoid statement, somebody is stealing his access code to his computer. To me, that's a cue. That is a psychological cue of a ticking time bomb.
LAPD Chief Charlie Beck just made some chilling statements during a press conference. Take a listen.
He was heavily armed. Sarkar was heavily armed. He had 2 semi-automatic pistols, one that he used for the homicide and the other that was in his backpack. He had multiple magazines of ammunition and multiple loose rounds of ammunition. He was certainly prepared to engage multiple victims with the ordnance that he had at his disposal.
And Anahita, one of the curious aspects of those events around the UCLA shooting was that people were a little critical of the massive response by the LA SWAT and various organizations, law enforcement organizations. I thought it was fantastic. There's worry out there that they may have left other parts of the city exposed. I'm sure they're thinking about that, but I think this finding, if nothing else, warranted that kind of response.
I agree. I mean, I live right by there, so I saw some of the police cars going by, and I think they did a fantastic job, Dr. Drew. You don't want to take any chances, especially with what's been going on our college campuses recently. And there was a big response to that press conference, actually. A lot of people turned this into the whole gun debate issue again. Is it guns that kill people? Is it people that kill people? And I think that takes away, that's a fine discussion to have, but let's not lose sight of the real victim. I mean, this young man, this young professor was shot and killed. He was a husband. He had 2 young kids. Now those kids are growing up without a father, and I think that's what we need to focus on here.
You know, not only that, Annalisa, Anahita, I'm glad you brought that up, which is that the LA Times spoke to a source who said the professor, William Klug, quote, bent over backward to help Sarkar finish his dissertation and graduate, even though the quality of his work was not stellar. Tiffany, multiple automatic weapons. Are you convinced there might have been more deaths?
I don't see why we wouldn't think so. Certainly his kill list was very specific. He knew exactly who he wanted to target, and thank God the other professor wasn't on campus that day. And who knows, you know, if he didn't find who he was looking for on that particular day, if he might not have shot someone else. So it's unfortunate that everything ended in the way that it did, but I'm so glad and so thankful that more lives weren't lost.
And again, Rob, trying to learn something from this, is there anything the professor, do you think he could have seen anything? Is there anything you've heard that he might have been exposed to that could have tipped him off that he had a potential problem on his hand? And what could he have done about it?
Or Doctor, are you talking to me?
Yes, I'm sorry, Ron. I beg your pardon. I said Rob.
No problem. No, you know, in this particular case, I don't think so, based on what we know right now. But, you know, I'd also like to add that, you know, just thank God that Mr. Sarkar's stopped at 1 killing, because he was certainly armed and equipped to kill many more people. This could have certainly turned into Virginia Tech. My company actually teaches active shooter response. for civilians. I thought the police did an admirable job. Better to have more there than not. I think they used the proper equipment. The protocol they used was absolutely excellent. And I think we really dodged, to use a pun, we really dodged a bullet on this one. Only one person besides the shooter was killed. That's a miracle. Most of these people just blow up and they shoot a lot of people.
Thank you, panel.